if Ken has any time left over after that, that'll be good. But with important people, you always have a lot to tell people about. So Dr. Ken Massey is a biomedical scientist and a senior director of venture development and a professor of pharmacology at Wayne State University.
Cool.
A fact I didn't know. Ken is a lifelong resident of Farmington Hills and a proud member of the North Farmington High School class of 1976. Ken holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Eastern Michigan and a PhD from the University of Texas Southwest Medical School. He's completed fellowships at the University of Arizona and the Michigan Hospital Association. He was elected mayor of Farmington Hills in 2015, following 12 years as a member of the city council. He understands the community as a lifelong resident of Farmington Hills. Community involvement has been an integral aspect of Ken's life from an early age, with his participation in civic groups and in scouting, where he earned the rank of Eagle Scout. He also served as a board member and chair of Botsford Hospital. Another thing that I really didn't know about.
That's why we have these meetings.
That's right, and a number of other service organizations. In addition to council, he has served the community in a number of ways. He was one of 3 founders and current board chair of CARES, C-A-R-E-S, and he may give you some additional details in that area. Ken is a member and past chair of Farmington Hills Farmington Emergency Preparedness Commission. He's a founding member and chair of Farmington SAFE, S-A-F-E. Ken has advocated nationally for Farmington Hills as a member of the National League of Cities, NLC, the Public Safety and Crime Prevention Steering Committee, and served as the organization's chair in 2012. He's a board member of Farmington Youth Assistance, which we have been involved with off and on over the years, has been president of the Farmington Area Council of Homeowners Association, then remains active as a member of his subdivision homeowner association board. Ken is married to Catherine and is proud to call Farmington Hills their home. And we're proud to have Ken with us this morning. So,
and you now have share, Ken.
Yep, I have share. Okay, I'm going to share this screen, and
there we go.
So, first of all, so the screen is shared now.
Yeah, we can all see it.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Len, I want to first of all say thank you for reaching out and the invitation to come and talk with the Rotarians this morning. It is certainly my pleasure to do so. And as mentioned in the opening, in the bio there, I have been here in Farmington Township, Farmington Hills for my whole life. And that is certainly part and parcel of what you're going to hear about this morning, because it did ultimately give me the base and from which I started. I did serve as mayor for 2 terms. I'm still on the city council. I was reelected back to city council after my 2 terms as mayor. And I will just share with you that with the previous editor of the Farmington Observer, Brad Cadridge, it was in 2016. I'd been mayor about 6 months, and Brad came in and asked me a question just before a meeting, how you doing this morning or this afternoon? And I said, Brad, I'm living the dream. And he looked at me and he stopped and he looked and he says, you know what? You are. You're the mayor of the town you grew up in. And that idea, that concept it struck me. I hadn't really thought of it quite like that. So this morning, I feel really strongly about our area. Obviously, I'm pretty bullish on the area. And part of that has to do with the fact that I did have my roots here. And I'm going to touch back on that because personal philosophy is that roots are very important. You need to feel like you belong someplace. And if you don't have that strong root system, like a tree in the wind, strong root system, you can survive that storm. And I'm lucky enough to be able to have gone out, gotten my education, and come back and be part of the city. This morning, I'm going to kind of go through a little bit, touch on a little bit of history, the township. Yes, I was here when it was a township and when it changed to being a city. The changes that have occurred, because the one thing that we know is constant is change. And then more drilling down more on what Farmington Hills is, a little bit about the government, the city organization, because I think that that's an interesting thing. A lot of people don't know exactly how we are organized. Comments about that. And then I'm going to kind of come to a discussion on where we are currently, some opportunities that we have, some challenges that we have going forward, and any kind of questions along the way. The information I had is that this is kind of informal. So if you have questions, I am happy to stop at any point and take those questions, or we can do it as we get through. But I'm happy to take them as we go along too. Makes it a lot more interesting.
Excellent.
So where are we? We're in a great place. One of the reasons that Farmington Hills is so popular is because we are actually at an intersection of so many different freeways. We're 25, 30 minutes away from the airport, 30 minutes away from Canada. We've got all the ability to go downtown within a 50-mile radius of us. We have 5 major higher learning institutions. There are a lot of resources right around here, which gives us in the Farmington area, and I'll call it that, Farmington Hills, while they are 2 cities, we are more of a Farmington area. Within the Farmington area, this really gives us a lot of focus. When I travel outside of the area for business, it's amazing how many people have been to Farmington or Farmington Hills. And it's usually because they fly in here, even if they're going somewhere else. But we have major companies that have located their North American headquarters within our area. And because of that, I think we have a lot of opportunities. Where do we start, though? Originally, Farmington was founded in 1824 by Arthur Power. So officially, that's when we were started. Power was a Quaker, and so were his fellow settlers. And the town was first called Quakertown, but then they changed the name to Farmington because that was his hometown in Farmington, New York. But the first bullet point on this slide, before people settled here, before Arthur Power came and settled here, and in the early 1800s, we were obviously a territory, but not a state. There was a lot. We already had civilization, lots of cultures here. And the city of Farmington actually had 3 Native American trails that passed through it: the Orchard Lake Trail, the Grand River Trail, and the Shiawassee Trail. So whereas today we might be sitting at the intersection of freeway systems with 275 and 696 and 96, and everybody crossing through it, we have that as our history going all the way back. And it stuck this slide in to demonstrate that. There's 2 reasons this slide is in there. But you can see here's this third one, number 3. This is the Orchard Lake Trail. 2 is the Grand River Trail, and this number 1, that's the Shiawassee Trail. And you can see that we had this expansive travel system. The other reason I like this particular map is this is from 1976. This is what our city looked like road-wise in 1976, which is when I graduated from high school. Up in the northwest corner, we had lots of open space. We still have a lot of open space on the west side. Another little feature of this map is that this Shiawassee Trail, as you follow it up, this little intersection, if you can see that cursor there, that happens to be my backyard. And we have a marking tree from that trail that sits at the southwest corner of my backyard. It's a huge, huge oak tree. It reminds me of the history of our community. Right, you just have to go out in the backyard and look at it. Taking that map, we kind of transitioned. This is what today looks like in terms of our roads. We're almost fully built out. The city's about 98% of the buildable property has been built into. This also can show you that this gray area here is the city of Farmington. So the city of Farmington Hills almost completely surrounds the city of Farmington. And Farmington Hills was the township of Farmington. Back in the day when the counties were being surveyed, they did them in 1 by 1 square miles, and a township was 6 miles by 6 miles, and a county was 6 townships by 6 townships. And then the township surrounding that whatever the city was in the middle, that tended to be the start of the area, and then it grew around that. So Rochester Hills, Northville Township, Farmington Hills, all is very similar evolution in that regard. The history here is very important to us because the founding with the Quakers, Farmington played a big role in the Underground Railroad. The Quakers themselves were abolitionists, and we want to preserve that heritage. And that's why you see just a couple little historical places here in the city, the Longacre House, the Spicer House. Now these are part of our Special Services Department at this time. They sit right in front of Heritage Park, one of our largest parks. But we have historical buildings and sites all around our 34 square miles. And this map, you can see these little green boxes on this map are historical sites, homes or other places. So we want to preserve that, and our Historic District Commission does a great job in doing that. Wanted to throw a couple of older slides. So this is a stone home that sits, it's one of the original homes. It sits on 11 Mile, just west, slightly west of Drake. It's still there, and it's still owned by the same family. They've passed it on down through the family over the years. This lower left side and the upper side, both of these are 11 Mile Road going west from Drake. And when I was young, this lower panel is what 11 Mile looked like. There were no paved roads. Halstead hadn't been paved. In fact, the only paved road when I was 6, 7, about the time I was starting to pay attention to anything, the only paved roads was Grand River, and Farmington hadn't been paved north of the city. Halstead hadn't been paved. And then you shift to this picture on the right, which is the exact same spot on 11 Mile. It does have a little bit of a difference. You can see some of the trees grew up and so forth, but certainly it's changed since I was younger. Other parts of the city have changed as well. And in this panel, this is the original Botsford Inn. This was when it was owned by Henry Ford. And down here in the lower left, this is the Civic back in the early 40s. And here's the Civic today. So we still retain that and really embrace that kind of culture. And this is just an aerial shot of Farmington. So this very blurry shot is because when I was starting to think about this and thinking about roots and thinking about some of the interesting things, one thing that had come up, there's features that are not there anymore in different parts of the community. So for instance, at Orchard Lake and 13 Mile, there used to be an airport. There's still a little remnant of that. There's an auto service facility, has a little glass enclosure at the top of it. That was the control tower. And the facility's garages used to be the hangars. If you look at the subdivision that developed just to the west of that and south of 13 Mile, the roads are extremely straight. Well, they're very long and very straight because those follow the runways. And that ceased to be in existence in the late 50s. Interestingly, if you look at aerial photographs of 40 50, 60, the airport actually disappears in the aerial photographs in the 40s because it was camouflaged due to the war. And then you see it in another shot that there it is. Well, this particular shot's 13 Mile and Farmington Road, and lore has it that there's a big tree in the middle of that intersection, and there was. And going back to my roots comment, I thought that I had to find something with big roots, and this was it. So about 10 feet to the west of Farmington Road was this huge elm tree, and no one seemed to be able to find a picture of it. And Len, to your comment, what we did on Facebook, I'm like, okay, somebody's has to have a picture of this. Well, from the aerial photograph, I extracted this picture, so you can see that the tree was there. I would have loved this picture to be the tree, but it's not. It's one that looked very much like it. It is, but it's definitely not the tree, but that's the concept. So we searched, and I've heard from 100 folks or so, and lo and behold, there is the tree. That is that's looking at the tree, and you're looking east towards the 13 Mile there. I can't tell you why you have decorated horses in the front of this tree, but that apparently in the Harrison family had this photograph, and it was sent to me after we looked at it. So in fact, there was a tree, and that's why I wanted to share that one.
So that was the first roundabout in Farmington.
Yes, actually, it's interesting. That's a great comment, Phil, because the folks, as I was looking for this, said, hey, if we had roundabouts, we'd still have this tree. But there you go. That was a big elm tree, and it was taken down in about, I think it was 1962.
How old was the tree, do you think?
Oh, it was a couple 100 years old.
My goodness.
And it's definitely a sizable tree. So with that, let me move quicker a little bit forward, because one of the questions that I've often been asked is, why do we have Farmington and Farmington Hills as two politically separate entities? And as I said, Farmington was the original town. Farmington Hills was the township. In 1971, there was a move to actually incorporate what was Farmington Township into the city and make it one large city. The votes in 71 went favorably. The residents of the township wanted to do that, and it went to the residents of the city of Farmington, who looked at all of this space, had a population of about a little over 10,000 folks. This gray area had a population about 10,000 folks, 9,500. And they looked at the voters, and I'm going to project into their minds of those voters that, wait a minute, we're supplying city services to these folks. How do we extend it to this? Anyway, the long and short of it was that the voters in Farmington turned it down by a margin of 61 votes. Otherwise, we would have been one big city back then. And once that was turned down, it went back to the residents in Farmington Township, who then created the city. They had another vote in 1972, and on July 1, 1973, the then township became the city of Farmington Hills as we know it today.
Hey.
So a little bit of interest, and there was some hard feelings, by the way, at the time between the leadership in Farmington and leadership in Farmington Hills. That did go away after a couple of years, but now we collaborate on so many different things. And this area was actually ranked as the best place in which to live in Michigan a couple of years ago. And they said it was Farmington Hills, but it was actually confused with Farmington's, the two cities together is what it is. As I was growing up, some of the things that we still do today, Founders Festival, but we used to have more, and a neighbor of mine had this photo, and the one that's subsequent to it. The subdivisions all had their own local units of government, and the subdivisions would come together, and Founders Festival looked a little different. each subdivision would put in their own floats. That truly was the way the city was done. This float happens to be from the old Homestead subdivision, which is the one I grew up in. This is their bicentennial float. There's another couple of views of the same float. This actually won Best Float in 1976. Our Founders Festival continues today. It looks a little bit different now. Obviously, this year was a little bit off, but we have a lot of citizen involvement and interest. So we still have a lot of programs, and I'm just going to moving into the city issues, but a lot of programs for senior adults, after school programs, different kinds of camps, fitness programs, sports programs. We still have the Founders Festival, although it's going through some transitions. That's one of the opportunities and one of the challenges we have right now. Art on the Grand, which was a spinoff from the Founders Festival. Holidays, we celebrated in the end sort of in December. City has open houses. There's lots of other events that we want to keep residents who want to be involved in any way they want. So shifting over to City of Farmington Hills, give you a quick update.
A question from Penny.
Yes.
In your events for both city and Farmington Hills, I'm curious as to why the farmers market isn't listed as an event.
Actually, it is on a later slide. On this slide, that was just a couple of quick, and I will tell you that what I was listing, a lot of the things that happen in one city or the other, or both, but I actually, one of the points of pride is the farmers market. So I was going to talk about that one itself. So city, we've got a stable government. We've got a strong financial and fiscal management. We're a AAA bond rated city. We've got high quality government services and facilities. One of the things that I always felt was important as I was growing up is the fact that I felt like I lived in a rural city. We strive, the councils have been striving for years to maintain that rural feel while we're offering more urbanized activities. We've got well-educated citizens who are involved, and we've got strong staff citizen relationships, which actually I'll focus on the police department, for instance. The citizens, between the citizens working with the police department is one of the reasons that we're constantly one of the safest cities, because they've got a good working relationship and people aren't afraid of it. We protect the environment. The picture here, which is City Hall, this is a LEED certified building at the gold level. So it's geothermal heating and cooling. We have water retention systems, stormwater runoff. We capture that. It's the parking area. It actually allows the water to trickle through it. We use indigenous plants. You can see the photovoltaic cells up on the top. So we get a lot of the energy. On sunny days, we actually sell energy back to DTE. So we've been doing what we can to ensure that we're good stewards of our environment. We recycle. Our recycling stream takes about 64% of our trash out of the landfills and recycles it, and we're trying to increase that. We've been voted a tree city because we do try and keep those kinds of things together. Just a couple of quick demographics about Farmington Hills. Our population is right around 82,000 people. We do have a population density that's coming closer and closer to an urbanized environment. And that's why it's important to maintain that rural feel. Median age is almost about 44 years. Nothing big surprises there. We are a city that's getting a little bit older. We are one of the safest cities consistently here in our city. We're usually number 1 or 2 in the state and in the top 50 in safest cities above 50,000 people in the country. City Council, this is your current City Council. Vicki Barnett is our mayor, and we are a council of 6 council members. And as I said earlier, council does not have term limits. The mayor has 2 term limits, 2 term limits, and we have all of the way we are organized. So you have the citizens are at the top of our org chart, and you have the mayor and city council associated with the city council, but not reporting to it in any way, shape, or form. We get the independent 47th district court. The mayor and the city council hire 3 people. We hire the city manager, the city clerk, and the city attorney. And then the other functions, as you can see, all fall underneath the role of the city manager. So central services, finance. I'll touch on, I've already mentioned that we're very strong financially. In the fire department side, we have all of the assets of big cities in terms of fire. We have an advanced life support EMS system, and that takes up about 75% of what the fire department does is emergency medical services. Then you've got the other fire equipment and fire responsibilities. Under the police department, that's the other big public safety issue. And between police and fire, that's the largest portion of our general fund budget goes to those 2 organizations.
So did you do your 2 terms, Ken?
I'm sorry?
Did you do your 2 terms?
Yes, I was, when I was elected to my first term, when I came back for the second one, I actually ended up running unopposed. So I did my 2 terms, and apparently I didn't make enough people mad because they reelected me back. So
I was just wondering if you're going to go back and do another one, but 2 terms is enough.
Well, the way our charter reads, and that's a great question, Phil, the way our charter reads is you only have to take off 1 cycle. I could go back.
Oh.
So the mayor's, in fact, Vicki Barnett was our mayor when I was first elected to council in 2003. She was the mayor.
I thought I recognized the name.
And then she went to the state. She was our state rep for a while. And then in the last cycle after I was term limited out, she ran and she was reelected to be mayor.
Hey,
again.
cool.
So you can come back and do that. So where are we right now? And that's kind of some high level. I do want to tell you a little bit about the diversity within the community, because we talk a lot about diversity. I'll leave it on this slide. I don't like the word diversity. I'm just going to be honest with you. I like the word inclusive. And that's what I think of when I think of Farmington Hills. And I will say, when I was growing up, this was a very homogeneous type of community. My class, I was in a class of 463 people coming out of North Farmington High School. We had 1 African-American person in that class. That has, and now our demographics have shifted so that at our last census, where 62% are considered identified as Caucasian, and we have about 19% that are African-American. And then we have American Indians, Asian Indians, a lot of Koreans, quite a number of Japanese. Actually, in the Japanese, Novi to our west has a larger Japanese residential population. We have a very large Japanese business population, which was one of the reasons that about 2 years ago, I went to Japan. The government of Japan brought a couple of mayors over as to talk about business and business retention and business growth. We have about 6% of our population are veterans. We have a higher than average educational attainment, where 95, 96% of our residents have gone through high school, but almost 54% of us have bachelor's degrees and higher, which is higher than the national average. So where are we now? We've got some great things that we're doing. I will tell you that one of the biggest changes that we made when I was mayor was to shift from what was called the special assessment district manner of paying for local roads. So residents had to pay for the road in front of their house. We still do in a way, but we would be writing, people would be assessed $12,000 for their road. to repave their road, and subdivision projects were huge. And that puts a large burden to suddenly say, hey, you owe the city $12,000. Well, that was a holdover from how special assessments and road paving was done in the township years. And here we are 45 years later, and we needed to change, and we did that. And now we pay for those through a road millage, which I think is one of the things I was proudest of as being mayor, was getting us to that. And there's a little controversy about it, but it certainly has given us some positive things. Another thing that we are experiencing is more and more people are using our facilities, and in particular the Caustic Center, the Activity Center. Well, we've outgrown it. We're busting at the seams there. So with the number of kids in schools decreasing, school district decided to close one of the high schools. They've closed a number of elementary schools and things like that, but they closed one of the 3 high schools, and that was Harrison High School. And when that happened, I was mayor at the time, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. And this gave us an opportunity we would never have again, because we could purchase that high school from the school district, and that gives us the ability to expand our activities center and meet things that people had been asking for from special services for surveys for the last 20 years. Aquatic center, performing arts center, well, that was all there. Plus we needed more gym space, we needed more programming space. And now what we did is buy that, and we are converting it into the activity center. The name is going to be the Hawk. And we now have 330,000 square feet of building space. We have 41 acres of land for recreation, and we would have lost that had that gone to some development. So really happy with the way that's coming along. Getting neighborhoods to share services, expanding on the positives in the community. We are an aging community, and we need to redevelop certain areas. If you think of the road along Orchard Lake Road, if you think of the buildings that are there, those are late 60s, early 70s style, flat, very spread out buildings. That's not what a lot of businesses are looking for today. So we have to be creative and look for opportunities to redevelop that. One of those tools is the Corridor Improvement Authority. This is something the state passed. I will tell you, I hate the name because the acronym is we're going to use the CIA to come and redevelop areas.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, not exactly what you want to do. So I mentioned recycling. We want to increase that from the 64% where we are currently. We would love to be able to do it. The challenge there is a lot of the areas that aren't served by our recycling are private property, apartment complexes, and condos. And this gets into the private versus public type of issues, and we're trying to work through that. Marketing the community, making sure that businesses know we're here. And I'll come to that in the next slide. Increasing planning, doing goal setting is something the city council does every year, but we want to move that into the departments. And just continuing to meet an evolving expectation from our community. The challenges, well, let's start with why we're all meeting remotely. It's this pandemic. This is causing business operations. I personally, with being at Wayne State, I have not been in my Wayne State office since March the 10th.
Right.
And it really calls into question, now that everybody's increasing their productivity remotely, what's going to happen to our commercial and business buildings? And the city, we have ideally, we would have a 65% residential tax base, 35% business tax base. And where we are right now, we're about 69% residential, 31. So we would like to see that come up. But I'm worried that in 2 years, as leases start coming off, we may see some challenges with those office buildings. We want to make sure that our city workforce is diverse. Here again, keep throwing this title around. And the reason I like inclusive, because I think that's the way we should be. Diverse has as its root word there divide. And I get tired of, we're in this together. So let's not divide us up. But we want to make sure that our city workforce reflects the community. And that's a really slow process, because when someone is hired in, they stay with the community 20 years, 30 years. So that's a challenge, but we're looking at how to better do that. Replacing our aging infrastructure. You've probably all experienced some degree of a water main break or something like that. We're trying to improve our infrastructure at every level. We are a community that thinks we want to stay on the cutting edge of things, and we've done this. As examples, the National League of Cities has something called the City Showcase. Our community has received awards and presented at that for 4 of our programs: our Farmington Safe program, our senior programs, our after-school programs, our emergency preparedness programs. All have been really cutting edge. We want to continue to do that and increase broadband infrastructure. That there's some folks that want to make that a city function. I personally want to see how we can engage and get the private sector to do it, because they'll do that better than we will. Maintaining, people move to the city. Why do you come to a city? If you have kids, you move into the city for 2 reasons. It's a safe city, check, we got that box. And then schools. You want to have good schools, and those are the 2 things that people look at. And we also have to prepare, because there are a lot of folks that are aging in place in the city. They like the city services. They find it's a good return on their tax dollars, and people don't want to leave the city just because their family they're now empty nesters. They want to maybe downsize. So we need to find ways of changing our housing stock to accommodate the folks that want to be able to be here. And then we are experiencing a number of retirements in the city workforce. You may have heard that our city manager recently retired. So we're replacing folks who have been with the city for 25, 30 years. And about 34% of our workforce could all retire in the next 2 years.
My goodness.
Which would be a huge turnover and a loss of institutional knowledge. So, to your question about some of the great things that we have, some of our challenges also, people don't like to talk about this because, Vic, when we opened CARES, along with the aging of our community and some of the changes that are going on, and then you overlay it with the pandemic types of things, it's put a big stress, excuse me. It's put a stress on a lot of our families. And this has created stresses economically. How do we supply people with food? How do we make sure that people have really fresh foods and nutritious foods? How do we ensure that people get what they need? With the pandemic, we've seen a big uptick in mental health issues, challenges, suicide risk goes up. So we have some things that we're very proud of here in the community. And I'll talk about the farmers market, because the farmers market has won awards for being one of the best farmers markets out there. And through the months they're operating, they just provide a plethora of different things for the community in the way of fresh fruits and so forth. Absolutely a great asset. And my concern is that it's going to outgrow its current space.
Right.
And we've had some conversations about how we can fix that and how we can deal with it. Of course, then along comes a pandemic, and now we can't do the winter's farmers market right now. We can't, but it's coming along. The summer did well. Now we have to restructure and kind of what we're going to do there. Farmington Safe stands for Suicide Awareness for Everyone. And this is really to change the dialogue on mental health, because if you think of the word mental illness and then get a community, it seems a person who's having mental challenges always feels alone. And if you get a community to say it's okay, It's okay to talk about health below, we always go to parties. We talk about hypertension and cholesterol as we get a little older. But nobody wants to talk about mental health, above the neck health. It's okay to do that. And if you say the word mental illness, but you get the community into it and replace the ILL with we, because we want to help with that. Now you have mental wellness. And that's what Farmington Safe is all about. And what we're focused on doing is to try and curb the incidence of suicide, which is the terminal end of mental illness, and actually get people help before they need it. And we've been very successful in doing that. So I was one of the 3 people that started Farmington Safe, and we're working on this, and now we're going to be doing some stuff with the pandemic issues coming up. And then I'll focus lastly on Farmington Cares, which was originally a food pantry run by St. Alexander's Parish down in the southeast corner of the city. And at the time they were struggling. Their archdiocese combined several parishes, and that left St. Alexander's empty. But that pantry was there serving about 140 of our residents. Now, between what we did with CARES, we expanded CARES, and it stands for Community Active Resource Empowerment Services. That's what CARES is all about. And we're trying to bring together all of the social safety net functions of our community, put them on one campus, and we've been very successful in doing that. I will tell you that where we were serving 140, now we have 864 families, almost 1,700 individuals that get food from CARES. CARES also has training for folks pre-pandemic, where they could help get resumes written. We have clothing pantry for people to get clothing as they needed it. Right now it's focused all on food resources, but all of this is to support our community. And I started out by saying that was a little controversial, because when we started it, we actually heard from the county that you don't want to talk about that. You don't want to publicize it, because Farmington Hills is considered an affluent community like Oakland County, and you don't talk about the people that are having those challenges. Well, by God, we have to talk about those people, and we have to support them, because they are our neighbors. And now about 70% of the folks that come into CARES, 68% are Farmington Hills residents, and we also support some in Southfield and some in Northeast Livonia. And that is expanding. And that's one of the things I will tell you, that I'll do you a little advertisement. CARES needs volunteers, because a lot of the volunteers that were there because of the pandemic are not there because they were seniors, and we want to be cautious with their health. So we need some volunteers. And if you have any resources or connections into big granting agencies, we'd love to hear that, because ultimately, while it's self-sufficient at this time, we want to expand the offerings here. So I'm going to there's my information. If you want, you can write to me, both my email, my personal email, and then my city email. And that's my home phone number. That's not my cell number. It's my home phone number. Oh, well. With that, I'm happy to address any of the questions that you might have.
Well, fantastic so far.
I'd just like to make a comment for what it's worth.
Can you turn off your share, Ken?
Oh, yeah.
I have a common point of connection for the year 1976, Ken.
Okay.
I moved my real estate franchise from Northwest Detroit to Farmington Hills between 12 and 13 Mile Road.
Oh.
And so your review of the dirt roads and the makeup of the community in 1976 brings back some memories that in most cases are pleasant. And I'm happy to be able to say that I brought some new citizenry to Farmington Hills that hopefully have done something to make it a better community for everybody concerned. So 1976 was a good year.
I would have to agree. Yeah, and there's so many different things that we could talk about and throw in here, because there are the anecdotal stories, and just looking for that picture of that tree. I just had to find one of those. And the folks that have wrote to me and shared their stories of, oh, when I was in high school, or when my sister was, it's a lot of fun. Actually, I will tell you that I did that. I put that call out on Facebook, and you obviously saw that, Lynn. I have to say, it was a whole lot more fun to do that than to look at Facebook and see people complaining about politics and COVID.
Yep.
So suddenly we had something else to talk about. So I think that was a good thing.
Comparably, a family tree is always more interesting
It's true.
than those two references.
Anything else? Any other questions about where we are as a city, or where we're going, or things you'd like to see in the city? How about that? That would be great to know as well. Yes.
I'd like to, I don't want to open up a can of worms. However, coming from Farmington Hills down the old trail of Shiawassee is traffic that I don't believe belongs in our residential area. Semis, car haulers, delivery trucks, beer trucks, you name it, comes down Shiawassee.
Mm-hmm.
And I know since we've lived here, I grew up in Farmington and moved back in 87. And two families that, when I was on the beautification commission, I was aware that two families who moved in down the street on Shiawassee, young families with little ones, moved because of the traffic on Shiawassee. If you want to draw families into an area, I think that needs to be looked at. It's disgusting what goes down Shiawassee on a daily basis. And if children are out there playing, who knows? To cut through from 10 Mile and Orchard Lake area through down to Shiawassee. I'm planning on moving, and that's the top of my list of one of the reasons that I would like to get out of here because of that traffic. Grand River's the main road, can't do anything about it, but Shiawassee, I'm sorry, it's awful.
So you're talking about from Orchard Lake Road to cut through going west from Orchard Lake Road?
Coming from the east towards going down towards the west. It's
so Penny lives at the junction of Shiawassee and Grand River.
Where the cemetery is.
Yes, right where Oak Hill is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will actually tell you, Penny, I totally agree with you, because I've come down Farmington Road and tried to go west there, and that it's backed up. I mean, that really, and part of that occurred when Farmington went to their road diet and narrowed down Grand River, because they wanted to slow traffic through Grand River, and now people are using that as a pass-through. So
right.
Part of that, the majority of the section you're talking about is a Farmington Road, not a Farmington Hills Road. But I will tell you what I can actually do for you is I'll be talking to one of the council members in Farmington, who was the mayor recently, Steve Schneeman. I'll be talking to him today. I will, without names, I can pass along this information. And I have a couple of ideas, because we saw the same type of thing in the hills. It was a cut through on 11 Mile between Drake and Halstead. And thinking about Grand River and Drake, there's the Endoplex Circle that's there. There's a lot of business warehouse type of thing. And then you have where Bush's is and that strip mall. So delivery vehicles and big trucks would come into the Endoplex circle. And I'm always amazed about how many tile companies. So these were big, heavy trucks with these tile loads. And then they would go up to get over to the freeway. They didn't want to deal with Grand River. So they go up Drake Road, which is obviously a residential type of road. And then they turn west on 11 Mile, and sitting right there is Hillside School. And you'd have these big trucks heading down the road. The speed limit's 40 miles an hour, and there's a school there. It's kind of a recipe for disaster. But we used some creative signage, I will say, and some, let's put it this way, a little out of the box thinking, to use an overused phrase. But we were able to limit that, and we've cut about 90% of that heavy truck traffic out of there. It won't get rid of the residential traffic, but I can talk to Steve and let him know that there's a concern there, and I know he's aware of it. I'm confident of that, and just tell him how we handled it, so he can take it to his council and get them discussing and see if there's a way they can do the same thing. So I'm happy to do that. And I'm really sensitive to it as well. By that 11-mile picture that I showed you, believe me, those big trucks going down there. I live 200 yards to the north of 11 Mile, and when those trucks were going by, I could hear them. And if you're out in the yard, you can hear them and feel them. And we eliminated a good 90+% of them.
Good. Thank you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Let me just. I'm going to write something down here. So
Don't put my name on it, okay?
All right, Penny, you're recorded.
So
that's right. So it is.
So yeah, I can bring that to their attention. So thank you for bringing that up.
Appreciate it.
Other questions or okay?
Other than
Actually, I had a little one, and maybe we're in the middle of a little project. We started planting purple crocus, and
Okay.
it melds into polio elimination, and the idea that when you vaccinate children around the world, the actual program had the children either paint or dip their finger into purple dye, so that you could tell who was vaccinated. And this is a program where we're sort of making people aware again that it isn't quite over yet, and that we need to keep doing that. So the question to get to your area, we've been planting bulbs right next to where Penny lives, in the diamond ending of Grand River and Shiawassee. We planted a rotary wheel there. But is there a quick idea on where we could plant? We've got 250 bulbs left that we could plant. They're best in a grassy plot. When they all come up, they look fantastic. But if you can think and get back to Lynn or I on a place where we could do those in the next week or so before they're all covered in snow.
Okay.
We might have a bloom of purple crocus in the spring.
The two thoughts immediately come to mind. I'd have to look at them, but I'll ask the city manager. There are areas on the municipal campus at 11 and Orchard Lake.
Okay, good, yeah.
That are in front of the police department building or the city hall.
Absolutely.
And those areas, and I think that where they are, and one of the things I'm thinking is right along 11, or excuse me, there could be 11 Mile, just west of Orchard Lake, or along Orchard Lake, south of 11. We've got a planting area there on the city.
Oh, cool.
And that might be really nice, because then it would be a nice color in the spring. It would have to go through Department of Special Services, so I'll check with that. And the other place that immediately comes to mind is outside of the Spicer House or Longacre House. There are various planting beds there.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the 11 Orchard Lake would get more visibility. So
okay, thanks, Ken. That'd be a great idea.
I will do that. And Penny, by the way, you brought up the fact that you live right there. You got Oak Hill Cemetery. So here's a question. Is the cemetery Farmington or Farmington Hills?
Well, Farmington.
And here's
No.
here's a little tidbit for you. It's a loaded question because everybody knows Farmington takes care of it. So it's going to be in Farmington. And it is. And it's considered a Farmington asset, in that that's why they handle it. And in the back of it, there's a big water tower that nobody's supposed to know is there. That's why they painted it green, like no one will notice a big. But it was so that's Farmington's water tower. And what I found out, we looked at a GIS map, and it was Mayor Schneeman and myself, and we were looking at this map, and it's actually both, because the political boundary between Farmington and Farmington Hills literally runs through the middle of that cemetery, east to west, and it's hard to describe exactly where it does that, but there are homes there on Locust Avenue and some of those homes where the house actually sits on the political boundary. So the question that I asked was, how do you vote? You're in Farmington or Farmington Hills, because your house sits on the line. And two things I found out. Number one is that the vote is determined by where your bedroom is in your house.
Goodness me.
Yeah. If you sleep in the north end of the house, you're a Farmington Hills resident. If you sleep in the south end, you might be a Farmington resident. So that's a little factoid. And then I am a lifelong resident. Okay, got that. My folks are interred at that in Oakwood. So both my parents are there. And in fact, when we bought the plots, we went ahead and, I was thinking it's Farmington Cemetery, went to Farmington City Hall, purchased the lot. My dad was the first to pass. And all said and done, so there is, but yeah, they're in Farmington. Well, once I found out where the line was, no, they're actually not. They're in Farmington Hills. And as luck would have it, I know Bob Rock from Thayer Rock. And at the time, my wife and I, we decided, okay, you're going to take care of those things. So we went ahead and pre-purchase plots. I am going to be a Farmington resident forever, according to the deed on my little thing, because where they positioned us. So it's just one of the little funny things that cemetery is one that just cuts through. And oh, by the way, that's where, if you go down to the bottom of the hill on the west side of the cemetery, you put your car neutral and roll back up the hill. If I don't know if you've heard that little legend, yeah. But it's a lot of people are putting it out on Facebook. And you had a question, Penny.
Yep.
I understood, and I don't even know where I heard it, but if you live in Farmington or Farmington Hills, a burial plot there in that cemetery is yours for free. Is that not true?
No, it's not true. It's a reduced cost. I mean, if you go to some cemeteries, they're higher prices for plots. They are not free, but there's a moderate cost to it. I think it's around $400.
Dying. I just wanted to know.
Oh, so you're not planning to move there real soon?
No.
Good.
Yeah, nobody wanted. It's a nice. It's kind of one of those nice to have things, I guess.
Well, no more questions. Lynn, you want to take over?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much, Ken, for your comments. And you gave us so much information that probably what we should do is refocus on a particular area and have you come back and talk to us.
I believe that's true.
Because it was very informative, it touched me because of my roots in Farmington Hills and my residence in Farmington, and the timing of all that was pretty close and convenient. But with that, one of the ways that we close our meetings each week, the other about only formal thing that we do is we recite the four-way test. And you might have seen it before, but if not, it is behind me if you can read it. It's the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. And please, if you respond, that's good. First, is it the truth?
Truth.
The truth.
Second, is it fair to
Fair
all?
to all
concerned?
concerned.
Third, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fourth, will it build goodwill and better friendships? I might have those out of order.
You have those last two out of order, and you did that last week too.
Yeah, the important,
You excuse him, he's new in Rotary.
that those four things, if anyone or everyone could live their life by those.
If only we could.
Yep. So with that, the meeting is officially adjourned.
Okay, as I said, the recording will be up on the site in about 24 hours. We'll let people know exactly what it was so that anybody who missed this meeting could come in and listen to Ken's stories. They were actually great. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll get the word out.
That's
Okay, thanks, guys.
And I
Thanks.
will just tell you that if you do want to pick one of those topics, any one of them, I am happy to come back and do this again. So
Excellent.
thanks for the opportunity very much.
Sometime next year, Ken.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.